afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Monica Malampalli, Healthy Women's Senior Advisor for Scientific and Strategic Initiatives. I'm delighted to welcome you to our final session in our Value of Biosimilars in Women's Health, three-part roundtable series. Today, our focus is on innovations in treatment through biosimilars, where we will explore what new treatment options are on horizon for various diseases and conditions. In 2019, Healthy Women held a one-day forum introducing the concept of what biosimilars means to women's health. The key takeaway was that biosimilars have a significant potential to increase women's access to affordable, life-saving drugs, but barriers still exist when it comes to access and uptake. Among the most notable barriers are lack of patient and provider education. In fact, a Healthy Women survey found that 70% of women don't understand biosimilars. To help close the knowledge gap, we have gathered diverse experts for robust discussions on innovations in biosimilars, overcoming challenges and barriers, and what women need to know about the latest treatment options. For more than 30 years, Healthy Women has remained true to its founding mission. From the start, we've been committed to creating and broadly disseminating evidence-based and clinically sound health resources tailored for the unique and often overlooked health experiences of women aged 35 to 64. I want to thank Amgen and Reactress for their support in helping us bring this important topic to life. I invite you to visit healthywomen.org to learn more. There you will also find recordings of the entire webinar series. Now I'm thrilled to welcome our esteemed panel of experts and today's moderator, Megan Rose Smith, Executive Director of the Biosimilars Forum. Megan is the first Executive Director of the Biosimilars Forum. She has spent her career in healthcare policy with top roles in the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, U.S. Senate, and U.S. House of Representatives. On the Senate Finance Committee, Megan worked on the landmark Affordable Care Act, which enacted the Biologics Price Competition and Innovation Act, also known as BPCIA, establishing the FDA's pathway to review and approve biosimilars. Thank you all for joining us today. My hope is that you leave feeling more informed and empowered. Now I will turn it over to Megan. Thank you, Megan. Please take it away.
Thank you so much, Monica. And thank you to Healthy Women for bringing us all together today. That is certainly my hope for today's discussion as well, that we all walk away more informed and empowered. Before I introduce our expert panel, I wanted to first share some context on why biosimilars are particularly important to women and a refresher on what we mean exactly when we are talking about biosimilars. So we all know that women often serve the role of the chief medical officer for the whole family. Women are making healthcare decisions, spending decisions, serving as caretakers. And as Monica has said, we need information we can trust. But regardless of this, in Healthy Women's study, 70% of women responded that they did not understand biosimilars or the biologic reference products that they are based on. In the next slide, I'd like to show the FDA patient resources and information available about biosimilars. The FDA notes that FDA approved biosimilars are safe and effective options for patients. Their technical definition about the terms you'll probably hear a lot about and that the industry uses quite a bit are on the next slide. When we talk about biosimilar and the biosimilar being similar to the reference product of a biologic, more simply, I like to think of biosimilars as the next generation of generics. Biosimilars are different than generics because all biologic therapies are complex. They're made from living cells and they're more complicated to manufacture than the conventional small molecule drugs. And biologic drugs, including biosimilars, they really represent the cutting edge of medical research, but they've also been the biggest driver in drug spending in the US. So biosimilars serving as the lower cost alternative to the reference biologic, they're able to save money and expand access to life-changing treatments. Biosimilars treat many chronic, debilitating autoimmune diseases that affect women disproportionately. They also provide treatment options for cancers like breast cancer. There are now 29 FDA approved biosimilars, but only 20 have launched in the US, and launched means available to patients today. So as part of today's roundtable, we'll discuss what innovations are in the pipeline for biosimilars, why it's important to educate healthcare providers and women about innovations in this space, what barriers exist to utilizing biosimilars and how these barriers impact women, and what we can do to overcome some of these barriers to build confidence among consumers. The panelists we have with us are the experts and leaders on biosimilar development, and I'm excited to introduce them and hear their insights. First, we have Erica Satterwhite. Erica is head of global policy for Viatris, a global healthcare company recently formed through the merger of Mylan and the Upjohn division of Pfizer. Prior to joining Viatris, Erica spent the last decade at Mylan, working in a variety of policy roles, including leading global policy, global biosimilars policy, and European policy and market access. Next, we have Chad Pettit, Executive Director, Marketing, Global Biosimilars Commercial Lead, Amgen. As Executive Director, Global Value Access and Policy for Amgen's Biosimilars Business Unit, Chad develops a global market access launch strategy for Amgen's portfolio of 10 biosimilar medicines. He serves as a liaison with the biopharmaceutical industry on policy matters in biosimilars, a rapidly growing segment of the Amgen business. With his global perspective, Chad is recognized as an expert on biosimilar commercialization, market access for biosimilars, and the policy measures required to facilitate cost savings for patients and the healthcare system over the long run. Next, Julie Reed, representing Pfizer Biosimilars. Julie has been engaged in global biosimilar policy for over 15 years, directing pre- and post-approval market experience in multiple countries across at least 9 biosimilars on the market today. She's an internationally recognized expert on biosimilars. And last but not least, we have Jim Carrey, AVP of US Health Policy at Merck and Company, where he serves as US policy lead for Merck's biosimilars and women's health businesses. Jim has been appointed head of US government relations and policy at Organon, which will spin off from Merck as an independent company focused on women's health in the second quarter of 2021. And I'm sure we'll discuss that today. Before we get into our questions, just a reminder for everyone watching, even as we're still in this virtual world, we would love to have you as involved in the discussion as possible. This information and roundtable is for you, so please, throughout the conversation, ask questions, give comments in the chat box, and Monica will bring you into the discussion. So, Erica, let's start with you. Can you share with us the explanation of your work in this space about biosimilars available to patients now, as well as anything in the pipeline that's coming?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Megan, and thank you, Healthy Women. It's great to be here today. So as Viatris, as we've previously stated, we continue to view our biosimilars franchise as a really long-term global franchise for us. We're fully committed to biosimilars. And while we're very proud of our track record in bringing biosimilars to US patients, including having the first US approvals for biosimilars referencing Neulasta and Herceptin, and having those important biosimilar treatments on the market now, we also believe there's a lot more that we can do in this space to better serve patient needs by continuing to break down the barriers to access that exist. From a portfolio and pipeline perspective, we have several products in the pipeline as well as on the market across multiple therapeutic areas, including oncology, immunology, diabetes, and ophthalmology. So really excited to engage in the discussion today, Megan. Thank you.
Thanks, Erica. Chad, can you tell us about Amgen's work?
Sure, thank you, Megan. You know, Amgen, we've been developing biologic medicine now for over 40 years. And in 2010, when the BPCIA, that's the Biologics Price Competition Innovation Act, was enabled in the US, we made a decision to move beyond and in addition to our innovative medicines to develop biosimilars. And we've applied our expertise in development and in manufacturing. And you know, you fast forward 10 years, it's been quite a journey and an exciting one. We've invested $2 billion. We've got a portfolio of 10 biosimilars now, 4 of them available in the US, 5 launched globally. And you know, I think we've learned a lot. And I think we've seen now with the launches in the globally and then also in the US what works. And what we're finding and what we've seen is that it's critical to have scientifically appropriate regulatory standards and scientifically accurate education that physicians and patients and others can trust and have confidence in biosimilars and in biosimilars as medicines. And we've also seen that competition on a level playing field works, and it's the reason that this marketplace has developed in such a successful way. And then we've also found that a foundation of intellectual property is really critical because it's innovation that advances medicine, and it's innovation that ensures the next generation of biosimilars and moves the ball forward in terms of both cost savings and providing treatment options for patients.
Great, thank you, Chad. Julie, can you tell us about Pfizer's work and any biosimilars in the pipeline we should look forward to?
Sure, thanks, Megan. Can you hear me okay? All right, cool. And just a special thank you to Healthy Women for holding the panel and for the invitation today. It's great to participate. So as you mentioned, Megan, I've been doing biosimilars for quite some time, having been involved in the launch of one of the first biosimilars in Europe. And then as Chad said, you know, BPCIA, as we call the bill, lobbying for the bill well over 10 years ago to see it happen. So it's exciting for me personally and for Pfizer to be in this place. Pfizer has been doing biosimilars for a number of years around the world. In the US, we currently have 7 biosimilars approved. 6 are on the market in the US, and they're in key areas, therapeutic areas that I think are very important to women. The first is biosimilars in the rheumatology and inflammatory conditions. We have a biosimilar to Remicade. It's a lower cost product available today in the US. And we have also a biosimilar to Humira that will come out in 2023, which we'll talk about more across all of our companies, I'm sure. The other 4 biosimilars we have, or actually 5, are in the cancer area, which is very important. So we have lower cost biosimilars in cancer therapies right now available for patients. And we have 3 that are in actual therapeutic areas. And one is a biosimilar to Avastin. It's Beva. That's used right now in chemotherapy for ovarian and fallopian tube cancers, as well as a biosimilar to the innovator biologic Herceptin called trastuzumab. And that is currently used as a frontline therapy for breast cancer. So again, a very focus on women cancer and therapies. And then we have a biosimilar in the area called rituximab, or Rituxan is its innovator product. And that's for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. We have two biosimilars that are also used in a number of different therapeutic areas, but mainly in cancer. And they're supportive care biosimilars, things that cancer patients get in addition to their primary chemotherapies. One of them is Epogen, Retacrit. It's for red blood cell stimulation. And then the other one is Nivestim, which is Neupogen, which is a filgrastim, and that stimulates white blood cells when you're getting chemotherapy to fight off any infection as you're very immunocompromised. So again, thank you. I look forward to talking more about just our experiences, but again, appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thanks, Megan.
Thanks, Julie. Jim, can you share with us Merck or Organon's focus?
Sure, Megan. Thank you, and thank you to Monica and Healthy Women for the opportunity to speak on this panel and to bring this important topic to its constituency. And I would be remiss in not expanding a little bit on the comment that was included in my bio that Megan related. In early June of this year, Merck is going to spin off a portion of its business to create a brand new independent company called Organon. Organon aspires to be the world's leading women's health company. And so I think that's particularly important to this audience. It will start off with Merck's women's health portfolio, which is primarily in women's reproductive health. But we are looking to move well beyond that and move into areas, including conditions that uniquely impact women and conditions that disproportionately impact women. Biosimilars is also going to be an important part of that for the very reasons that the other panelists have spoken about, which is the biosimilars which have been introduced so far and developed do treat many conditions which disproportionately impact women. So in terms of what we have on the market, what we are bringing onto the market, you'll find that there's a lot of overlap in the products that are on the market already. Merck also has an infliximab biosimilar on the market for treatment of rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's and colitis, psoriasis, etc. And we also have a Herceptin biosimilar on the market called Ontruzant, which treats breast cancer. And we also are pursuing and will be launching in 2023 a Humira biosimilar. And very soon we are expecting FDA approval for an Avastin biosimilar as well. So we have publicly stated our intent to bring additional products to market beyond those that I've mentioned already, and we are committed to not only addressing needs of women but also looking to bring biosimilars to the market, which we believe will lower costs to the system and expand access and availability for all patients and particularly women.
That's great. I heard a lot of products about helping women in the oncology space with specific cancers. Also, it sounds like there are new products coming that will be biosimilars to Humira. Chad, is there a specific disease area that Amgen is focused on with their biosimilar pipeline for the future? And if so, can you tell us how you decide that focus?
Sure. I think like we're hearing as we're hearing the biosimilar portfolios across these companies, Amgen's very similar. We have a focus on cancer and chronic inflammatory diseases. These are many of these conditions disproportionately impact women. For example, breast cancer and rheumatoid arthritis. And when we look at as examples, we have Amgen's Kanjinti, which is a trastuzumab. It's about to overtake Herceptin at 40% market share, and we have our Mvasi, which is a bevacizumab, which now leads its segment at 50% market share, and has caused the reference product share to decline by more than half in 24 months. It's the fastest biosimilar uptake so far in this marketplace. And I think if you step back and you kind of look at the bigger picture in terms of how we're thinking about medicines, COVID-19, if it's taught us anything, it's really taught us that investing in healthcare is really investing in the future of society. And if you think about what the biotechnology and pharmaceutical industry have done to reduce the burden of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, asthma, and other chronic conditions over the past 20 years, if that had not happened, COVID-19 would have been much more devastating. And so our view is that innovative and biosimilar medicines really offer the best hope to effectively manage disease like cancer and like chronic inflammation, and also at the same time to contain long-term healthcare costs, whether that's the cost of just the burden of the disease itself or the cost of the medicines over time.
I think those are such great points about the management of some of these very difficult diseases, and the hope that biosimilars can bring, as well as the investment in healthcare and innovation. And we've never seen a need for that more than this year, and been so appreciative of science and the scientists who are working for all of your companies to develop these amazing products. I, for one, was extremely grateful to get my first Pfizer COVID vaccine shot. So with that, I'll turn to Julie representing Pfizer for the next question.
Okay. Well, I'll just stop there.
To ask,
Thanks, Megan.
So we've talked about the biosimilars that are available to women, what's coming in the pipeline. Sounds like a number of new products from all of your companies coming in 2023. How do women learn about these products? What's the best way for women to be informed consumers?
Sure. I think it's very basic in, look, if you have a medical condition or one of your family members have a medical condition, as you're in the system and you're prescribed a biologic drug, most likely right now, it means you're going to get an infusion. And so if you're in, the unfortunate situation where you're getting chemotherapy, or you have, rheumatic arthritis or something like that, and you're getting an infusion, there is a biosimilar available. And that's a conversation with you and your physician. It's with you and your pharmacist or the nurse to ask about it. And I encourage everyone to ask, is there a biosimilar? Is there a lower cost drug I could be taking, and the doctor will know. And in addition, it's sort of that same conversation when generic drugs are available, as you talked about, Megan, in the beginning. Is there a generic for this? I think we're all, especially, as a woman, as a mom of 2 teenagers and the breadwinner, I'm always looking for the lower cost opportunity, especially in medical care. So I think that's the first line of learning about it. If you're not sleeping well and you need to Google late at night, Google biosimilars. You'll see all of us have educational materials, including many of your advocacy groups. If you're a cancer patient, the American Cancer Society has educational materials. The FDA is the source and the authority for the real information about biosimilars. We have seen, I think folks have talked about it, we have seen where, again, if you're Googling at 10 o'clock about biosimilars, you may get information that is what we call disparaging and is misinformation. And so again, the authority of what's real about biosimilars is at the FDA. Same with your doctors, though. And I think that's the very first easy conversation to have. Thanks, Megan.
Thank you, Julie. And also I appreciate you touting and reminding everyone the value of nurses when you're in your provider's office.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Daughter of a nurse.
Yeah. And trusted sources of information like Healthy Women are so valuable. It sounds like we're getting some questions. Monica, do we have questions from the group?
Yes, Megan, we actually do. All right, we have a few of them. All right, the first question, actually, I'm going to read out 2 questions that are very similar. What are each of your companies doing to heighten awareness for biosimilars among women and healthcare providers? And a similar question to that is, how are you as companies working to educate healthcare providers about biosimilars and their benefits for patients?
Great, thank you. Erica, are you interested in jumping in on that one?
I'll just comment very briefly to say, I think, as you noted, Monica, Beatrice is sponsoring this webinar. So working with groups like Healthy Women and other groups that we know are trusted sources of information, and ensuring that we are supporting those groups to do the great work that they do, as well as providing any resources that we have in connecting the dots and sharing that information. So that's a big part of how we're trying to share information. Of course, we also have our own company resources, and certainly, I think as Julie said, on all of our websites, you'll find plenty of information as well, but would certainly point everybody to the FDA. I completely agree with Julie. That is the gold standard of trusted information. So everything we can do to point people there as well, we're trying to do.
Chad, did you want to jump in on this?
Sure. First of all, I would echo what's been said by Julie and Erica in terms of the FDA as a source of trusted information. That is the foundation. What Amgen's doing specifically, we just released a new website called InsideBiosimilars.com, which provides healthcare professionals with fast facts on biosimilars. And I think that's an important resource for physicians. One of the things that I think, whether it's a patient or a physician, I think we all need to understand, what are biosimilars? How are they manufactured? How are they developed? How are they approved? How are they prescribed? We all need to understand that so that we can have confidence. And to assist in that, if you go to the AmgenBiosimilars.com website, we have a section called BioEngage, which addresses each of those questions specifically, and I think is a great resource. And then I know we've had some discussion here about physicians and nurses. Patients rely on their physicians. They rely on counsel from nurses. And I think it's critical to make sure that there's continuing education on biosimilars, and that's helping to increase the understanding. And that's something that we as a company are doing, and I know the companies on this call and across the industry we're trying to do to help create that confidence that physicians and patients need in biosimilars.
Absolutely. Monica, do we have more questions?
Yes, we do. We have a couple more. One is, given how behind Europe we are in biosimilar approval, will we ever be able to catch up and narrow the gap in approval so we can get biosimilars that are already approved in Europe to the market in the US?
Want me to take it?
Sure. Yeah, Julie, you can take that, and then I think it would be helpful for us to go into the next segment on the market and barriers to uptake.
Okay. This is a question that goes to my age. I was in my 20s when I started biosimilars in Europe. I'll just leave that on the record. I think, I think folks feel we are behind Europe, but folks, I think, don't realize we started later. And so I think that's really key, is that the US started later. We had to pass a law to allow the FDA to approve a biosimilar, and that happened 10 years ago. And the key about a biosimilar is it takes our companies 7 to 8 years to develop one. So we're really in step right now developing the biosimilars. The FDA has over 70 development products or development programs that they're working on. So I think we will catch up. I think the US needs the lower cost products. We will catch up. I think all of you, again, and if you are in a situation where you're getting an infusion, you're going to see a biosimilar for you or your loved one in that category. It will be lower cost and you'll benefit from that. But I think we will catch up. I think it's just, if we had both started at the same time, we would probably be even. Erica, I don't know if you would agree with that or not, having your global experience as well.
Yeah, thanks, Julie and Megan. Maybe it's okay if I can just transition us into our next section. I know we were planning to talk about some of the barriers there, and I think this is a great segue.
Sure, please transition us to the unique situation in the US market and what you've seen from other places around the world.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'd love to respond to this from a global perspective. Since as Viatris, we have over 300 approvals for 7 different biosimilar products that we actually market already in over 75 countries around the world, including the US, but really want to bring that experience to bear here. And what we've learned from that global experience is that there's no silver bullet. There's no single policy that can help achieve a successful biosimilar market, because every health system has different needs, and because of those needs, there will be different solutions that work for that health system, and even multiple solutions within a specific system to focus on solutions that are needed by the molecule or the channel. That being said, while there is no silver bullet, there are certainly best practices that can help each of those health systems find the right solutions, and we think that's relevant as well to the US. So some of those best practices that can be shared are looking at supportive tone from the top. So from the government, from payers, from decision makers, setting a supportive tone for biosimilars, setting goals related with biosimilar use, engaging in multi-stakeholder buy-in to ensure that, again, as we mentioned earlier, there is that education, there is that trust in biosimilars, and really focusing on implementing the policies with a feedback mechanism to ensure that we are monitoring how policies are impacting actual access to these important products and adjusting those based on the learnings there. So as the US continues to work to fully harness the savings and the access that is promised by a robust biosimilars market, there are still unfortunately hurdles in the US. There's still some regulatory challenges we face, even though that we are seeing a number of approvals in the US. There are certainly disincentives that we see from the payer perspective. There's market dynamics that are not aligned. There's misinformation campaigns that are still there that have held the biosimilars market back in the US. And the US is incredibly complex as a system. And an important piece for us to remember is that incentives really need to align across the system to ensure that the availability of lower cost options like biosimilars really do translate into savings for the entire system, including all of the stakeholders, providers, and patients included. And one of the policies I'd like to focus on that we think could help in the US and bring an example of sort of best practice from elsewhere is on shared savings. So this is an interesting area. There's a great example that we can draw on that's been tested in England that had really impressive results, both for utilization of lower cost alternative as biosimilar, but also in improvements in patient care. And this is published, and so you can certainly read more about this. But in this example, a hospital in England, Southampton General, entered into an agreement with their local payer, the commissioning group there, for hospital-based services to allocate a portion of the savings from using a biosimilar. In this case, it was biosimilar infliximab, sharing those savings back with the hospital so that the hospital could then reinvest those savings that they got from using a biosimilar into hiring an additional nurse to support patients going through their biologic treatment. And so as a result of engaging in this shared savings approach in which the hospital and the patient were able to see the benefit of the savings that otherwise would have accrued only to the payer, they were really able to ensure that that value was being created all the way across the chain. And so that's an example, again, where there's no single policy that will work everywhere, but there's certainly learnings we can draw, and there's certainly continued room for improvement in the US system to ensure those incentives are aligned so that the value of biosimilars can really reach patients as well.
And Megan, if I may, I think, and I'd like to sort of, link the question about barriers to uptake back to the previous questions about what's the best way to learn about this.
Sure, please.
I think the healthcare practitioners, the healthcare team, certainly is the most trusted and best source of information for patients, so that they could get be more informed and be more comfortable in using a biosimilar that their provider wants to use. And I think and it really, in spite of all really good work by FDA and by organizations such as Healthy Women, we have a lot of work to do with providers to make sure that they are comfortable with this. And the reason is there's a lot of misinformation out there. Much of it is just genuine lack of understanding about how biosimilars work and what the approval process is, and et cetera, because they're so new to the marketplace. A lot of it, unfortunately, is intentional disparagement that has been put out there as well, and it's created confusion. So if I'm a physician who I've spent 20 years using this originator reference biologic, and I'm very comfortable with it, and I have tremendous confidence, and it's been working well for my patients. And then all of a sudden, the biosimilars comes available to me, and I'm hearing questions about it, and I'm not exactly sure. And there's this concept of interchangeability, which I don't know about. And then I consider the fact, this is going back to what Erica said about incentives, where I consider, there's really little value in my practice for using this. And more importantly, there's really not much value for my patients either in using this in terms of cost sharing. So it's, it creates some reluctance. And it's something that I think we need to continue to overcome. I totally agree with the point that Julie made about the FDA and their educational programs. The FDA has the most robust approval process for biosimilars in the world. It's totality of evidence, as it calls it, process, so that patients and providers can be confident that if a product is approved by the US FDA for use in a particular condition, that we could be well confident that it's going to have no clinically meaningful difference from the originator biosimilar, and that's a message we need to continue to keep pounding home with providers.
Let me, Megan, just comment on in terms of barriers. I think it's also important to note, yesterday, Bernstein, which is a Wall Street analyst, published a report. Their title was, "So far, biosimilars are proving an effective cost control mechanism in the US." And the essence of their report was that the biosimilars market continues to accelerate in the US, with now $4 billion in biosimilars, that the public savings that have resulted have been $7.4 billion out of the $20 billion of originator biologics that were experiencing competition. And also that there's been 10 to 15% per year price declines as a result of the competition that has come from biosimilars. And then, beyond that, at Amgen, we've certainly experienced that, which is what Bernstein is saying, with our 40 to 50% market share in our oncology biologics. But I'd also note that even biosimilars that launched earlier, for example, the infliximabs that launched 4 years ago, they may have only reached 19% market share, but they've forced a 49% decline in the price of the innovator biologic. And we've also seen that in the pegfilgrastim market, where the ASP for the originator has declined actually to the bottom of the group when compared to the other biosimilars. And so I think what we're seeing here is really the positive outcomes of biosimilar competition, which is why at Amgen, we have a different point of view in terms of what's needed in the marketplace. Our view is that the market's really taking off, and that the existing structure in the marketplace in terms of policies is really supportive of the biosimilar launches and the success that we're seeing, and that no change is really needed. We just need to stay focused and let the marketplace develop.
And I appreciate that, Chad. And I think, as you know, I'll speak for as president of the forum and everything, our attitude is when 90% of the women on this call have access to a lower cost product in their families, and 90% of American consumers have access to a lower cost biosimilar, we'll be able to say the market is working. 40, 50, 20% is not enough, not for consumers and not for the savings that our healthcare system needs and our families need. So appreciate it.
Megan, we actually have a few questions.
Sure thing. I did just want to comment on one point that Jim and Erica were talking about in terms of the incentives that currently exist for physicians. It's almost like the existing incentives are are backwards, incentivizing our providers to use the higher cost product, and some of the programs that Erica talked about, like a shared savings model, can help right size those incentives. And those are some policies that the Biosimilars Forum is looking to work with policymakers to advance to help get more consumers these savings. But yes, let's hear these questions.
We have the one we have here right now. We talk about cost savings using biosimilars, but the patients do not always realize the cost savings. Most of the savings goes to insurance companies and PBMs, pharmacy benefit managers. How will the patients realize cost savings in the future as more biosimilars come into the market?
Part of that question was saying most of the savings go to the insurance company and PBM.
Yeah.
Julie, you're smiling like you want to take that. I think that question is referring to some of the existing market games that we should address to make sure people get the savings biosimilars can deliver. But Julie, please take this question.
Thanks, Megan. And I think it's a great question, but I can talk from a Pfizer experience. And we looked at this with one of our biosimilars, and the cost savings does go with patients who have out-of-pocket expenses. We were able to show that one of our biosimilars has at least 45% of cost savings on out-of-pocket for patients. And we did that study. So we do know that. We do know that the cost, as Chad said, we are seeing competition and we are seeing lower prices. The issue today is that, as I mentioned earlier, the therapies that patients are getting where biosimilars are available are in the medical benefit. And so oftentimes that's, a service, a chemotherapy, an infusion, that type of thing. And the question is are your out-of-pocket costs going down? And it's sometimes difficult to see just because of the way your insurance works. But we are studying that, and we are showing that patients are directly receiving lower out-of-pocket costs.
That's great. I know we don't have too much time left, and there's been a lot for us to cover in this discussion. Before we end, I did want to make sure that everyone had a chance to answer the question about what's the one thing you want to share with this audience that would be most important regarding the value of biosimilars in women's health. Eric. Oh, Jim, please go ahead.
As I'm going to be soon in a couple months working for a company whose motto is a better and healthier every day for every woman. Organon, clearly believes in the value of these products, and I think one of the things we've seen in sort of a lesson we've learned from Europe that as we get greater uptake here in the U.S., hopefully we can replicate, is in those markets where there's been tremendous uptake of biosimilars. It has resulted not only in cost savings to the system, but it's resulted in more patients, more patients, including women, and particularly considering the conditions that they treat, receiving therapy. So it's broadened the ability for patients to receive these types of treatments because they are more cost effective for the system. And that's a win-win across the board, where if there are people who should be on particular therapies but are not on because of the cost of them, and expanding access through biosimilars is going to result in greater access. That's what we strive for, because that's ultimately going to benefit patients it's going to benefit the system, it's going to benefit taxpayers, and everybody wins across the board.
Megan, do you mind if I jump in to build on that point? Yeah, I completely agree with what Jim said there. And I, you know, from my perspective, I want to also bring it back, I think, to something Megan raised earlier about COVID. And we know that women have really felt the impacts of COVID more acutely and have had to make really hard choices over this last year about balancing their own health needs and their family's health needs. And as a mother, I understand that impulse to put my own needs aside to care for my family, but this is an impossible choice. We should not be asking this of women, and we should really be supporting women to make choices for their own health, because that means that they'll have healthier families. And a big part of that is improving access to more affordable medicines like biosimilars. And biosimilars really continue to be such an essential component of healthcare systems, both in terms of, as Jim said, expanding access to these therapies, but also providing more choices for patients and physicians, while also ensuring that we're addressing the healthcare budgets that we know will be increasingly stretched as we deal with COVID-19 and we move beyond it. And the value that's brought by biosimilars and the competition to these, again, as Megan, you said earlier, some of the top drivers of drug spending in the US are the originator biologics here. And so the value brought by the biosimilars competition is imperative as we're looking at how health system resources are responding to COVID-19. And really, as we look to the post-COVID-19 system, biosimilars are going to be a critical component as economies continue to deal with that. Economies both at the health system level, but also in the household, and it's an important part of that. And I think that value can't be understated.
Absolutely, really well said.
Let me build on that. I think it's a great point. You know, as this pandemic has dominated the public consciousness, there's another healthcare crisis that's really emerging for patients, I think for women, for all of us, with serious medical conditions that are being postponed or delayed. And you know, as we're seeing preventative screenings that are postponed, what that means then is that early diagnosis for serious illnesses such as breast cancer can be delayed. We know the National Cancer Institute had estimated that missed screenings and other pandemic-related impacts could result in an additional 10,000 deaths for breast cancer and colon cancer alone in the next 10 years. And so I think, just to echo the point that we've heard, which is, I think, an important one, and I think for Amgen it's important. You know, our mission is to serve patients, and it's never been more important. During this period of COVID-19, it's the competition among biologics, which include reliably supplied and high-quality biosimilars, that then have the potential to reduce the healthcare costs for everyone. And that comes through in terms of reduced premiums and savings to patients and across the system. And at the same time, to deliver the important clinical benefits that biologic medicines bring to patients.
Julie, do you want to have the final thought, the one thing you would like the audience to know about the value of biosimilars for women, and then we'll have to wrap up?
Sure. I'm going to take a sort of a personal perspective on this. I think there's a couple things. One, so I'm a mom, obviously, and my firstborn is going to college in the fall. And one thing he's seen growing up is me in biosimilars and how important and passionate I have been, because it's so important for families and patients to have access to these medicines at a lower cost. So one thing I told him is go into college, create a career and a life that you're passionate about. And I think that's probably something we all say to our kids. The other piece is we also have, I talk from experience, we have a family member going through chemotherapy right now. And as scary as that is, I will continue. Biosimilars are available, they're lower cost, and I think the most important thing as the value to all of our audience is ask about them, ask us about them. If you need help, we're here for you. But this is a medicine that is lower cost and available, and it's important for your family to have access to it. I think we'll know success in the US when we see that 90% of the patients who need a lower cost biosimilar have access to it. So it's incredibly important that we get to do these events, and just want to really thank you, Megan, and the Healthy Women group for asking us to do this. So I talk too much, so I'll be quiet.
No, thank you, Julie. That's a very valuable story for you to share, to give the personal perspective, and all of the perspectives from our panelists have been very helpful in helping us understand the dynamics in the market and what women can expect. Monica, I'll turn it over to you for any final words. Thank you again.
Thanks, Megan, and thanks for everyone for joining us today. On behalf of Healthy Women, I thank our moderator, Megan Smith, and our panelists for this engaging conversation. If you have any questions that were not answered today, please email your questions to us at webinars@healthywomen.org, and we'll get back to you with answers from our panelists. I also encourage you to continue to engage with us on our other programs and content via our website, healthywomen.org. Finally, I want to thank our sponsors, Amgen and Viatris, for making this event possible. Again, thank you and goodbye.